You are listening to the Wildlife Photography Podcast with Rob Reed and Josh Galicki, bringing together the love of nature and photography. Episode 44, How Art Intersects with Photography. Well, hello everybody, and welcome to the Wildlife Photography Podcast with me, Rob Reed, and my co-host Josh Galicki. Hey Josh, how's it going? We haven't spoken for a while.
Yeah, it's been a little while. It's going well, Rob. Just getting ready, hunkering down. We're supposed to get a blizzard actually today. There's a northeaster coming, and it's going to be, they're calling it like a snow cyclone bomb or something dramatic. But in any event, stocking up on groceries and getting ready for the snow. Maybe we may get a couple of feet from what I understand. So we'll see.
So you might have to hunker down for a couple of weeks.
I think so. Well, at least a couple of days. It's just a matter of, how bad it's going to be. We're supposed to get, 40 mile an hour plus winds. So it's going to be interesting. I just hope the power stays on.
Well, I think to be honest, I would rather have interesting snow than what we've had for the last 2 months. And I am going to moan about the weather now because it's just been, I mean, I've never known rain like it. It's just been, all we've had since December is rain, and it's just pretty much constant. It's been so wet and miserable. So I just haven't got out with the camera at all. But yeah, so I'm looking forward to that, for that decent spring weather, which is just around the corner. And hopefully, I mean, we have seen the sun this afternoon, so and there are a couple of good days on the forecast for this week, so you never know. But anyway,
spring can't come soon enough. I'm with you.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it'll be here before you know it. I mean, snowdrops are pretty much over now, and daffodils are all sort of basically flowering, and I was seeing blossom as well today for the first time, so which has come out in the sun. So yeah, it's just around the corner. The birds are starting to get frisky, so it won't be too long. Yeah,
I always forget you're all slightly ahead of us over here in the States. So I've actually been just cutting things back. I mean, I guess you would consider this late winter right now. We have some early migrants coming back, like American robins, red-winged blackbirds are back. But overall, everything is just still dead. Nothing popping out of the ground. Probably not for another few weeks at this point. So
yeah, I guess we are a few weeks ahead. But I mean, snowdrops, they're always sort of late January now.
Wow.
And our guest actually today, because we have a guest, is well versed on photographing snowdrops. So it seems like a good point to introduce her and bring her on. So Victoria Hillman, welcome to the podcast. Good to see you. How's it going?
Hi Rob, hi Josh. Thanks for having me on. I'm with you, Rob. I'm done with the rain. Seriously, I've had enough of it. Although it's been a really lovely sunny afternoon here, so I know the garden's definitely going to be enjoying that for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Vic and I don't live too far from each other, do we? Sort of not 50 minutes or an hour down the road. So you pretty much get the same weather as me.
Yeah, pretty much.
So it has been pretty miserable, and rivers are high, and everywhere's as muddy as you can imagine. So it would be nice to get some dry weather and let things drain away a little bit, but I'm not holding out too much hope, to be honest. Not holding out too much hope.
I don't think I even want to look at the forecast now. I'll just see what happens in the day when I get up.
Yeah, exactly. Every time I look at the forecast, to be honest, it's always grey, rain, with the odd sunny interval, but they don't seem to last very long.
No, and it seems to change every single day.
Yeah, exactly. Even when the forecast looks optimistic, you think, oh, there's 2 or 3 days worth of sunshine coming, and then the closer you get to it, it changes, and we just get rain, cloud,
more rain.
More rain. Well, you know what's going to happen now, though. We'll have a tremendous summer like we had last year, and we'll have a drought, and then before you know it, we'll have hosepipe bans, because that's what happened last year.
probably.
We had torrential rain all winter, and in the village I live in, we had water being pumped, literally until May or June to stop it, because the water table was so high, to stop it flooding all the cellars and the roads and things. And then by August we had a hosepipe ban. It was completely ridiculous.
Wow.
See, I live on a hill, so if we get flooded, there's quite a lot of the southwest of England that's in big trouble.
Exactly. But you are surrounded by the Somerset levels, aren't you? And yeah, they have a habit of flooding.
They are doing their job.
Yeah, they are. Yeah,
they are floodplains, and they are definitely doing their job.
Anyway, I thought we've got Vic on because we wanted to talk about how art influences photography and vice versa. Because Vic, why don't you give a bit of background, to your a sort of transition that you've made over the last few years. I mean, when I first met you, you were heavily into photography, and I have to say you've been a very big influence on the way I look at photography and the way I now, the sort of artistic approach I now take to it. But you've transitioned over the last few years. And now you concentrate more on artwork. Do you want to give people a bit of background to you and the sort of reason behind that transition?
Okay, well, yeah, I mean, I've been a professional wildlife photographer and zoologist for 20 plus years. And I guess it kind of started in 2020 with COVID, and things started to go downhill in terms of bookings. Everything got cancelled. Some stuff picked back up again, but not everything. And like the photography for me, it was always a way to kind of showcase what I'm seeing, and I've always liked the more kind of artistic, creative side of things, particularly close up and macro photography. That was always my thing. But in 2021, I was diagnosed with something called thoracic outlet syndrome, and that actually led to me requiring major surgery in 2022. I won't go into the details for anyone who might be squeamish, but the hope was that after a long and lengthy recovery that I would be able to go back to being a full-time photographer, but sadly it didn't quite work out that way. And in 2023, it was left up to me. The medical team always said it had to be my decision. They wouldn't make the decision for me, but the general view was that it would be very difficult for me to go back to being a full-time photographer. Not that I couldn't take photos anymore. That actually isn't the issue. It's more I couldn't do it full-time and be reliant on it, because if I get a really bad day, I can't drive anywhere. Like, I would struggle to go downstairs to make a cup of tea, even after the surgery. And because it all involves nerves and stuff. So I actually made the decision in 2023 to start the transition, I guess, if you want to call it, over to artwork. I've always kind of dabbled in art, and actually during 2020, when I was stuck at home and couldn't do anything, I did start to go back to it. But then it's just kind of really picked up, and I found through doing Global Bird Fair with my art as well, I was talking to people, and the connections I was making through art was so incredible and amazing, and it was opening up all these doors to me. It really did make me think about my future and what I wanted to do. And then last year it was kind of fully cemented for me, knowing that I would have to undergo spinal surgery, that being a professional wildlife photographer, it was just never going to happen again. But being a full-time artist is definitely workable for me, because I work completely within my own time. I'm completely self-employed. I'm totally honest with people that I work with that, you know what, I do still have bad days, and I'm happy to work with you, but it's kind of got to be on my timescale. So I am now 100% pretty much full-time wildlife artist, but I still do my photography. So photography is actually still a really big part of what I do, but people tend to see the art more.
Vic, I have to say, I think it's amazing that the circumstances over the past couple of years that have been out of your control, how, these things have helped put you on a new path and a new direction, and just exploring, a creative eye and artistic side, even outside of photography. So that has to be amazing. I mean, I can imagine some people would feel almost brought down by this, but you took advantage of it and expanded your creative ability. I think that's saying a lot. What's your perspective on that?
I won't lie, it was really hard, and I actually, through the process, I actually saw a pain psychologist that helped me kind of come to terms with it all. And she actually said to me, in terms of the managing the pain and that side of it, I've got it, I'm doing everything that I should be doing. But the one thing she said to me is, you have to essentially grieve for that part of you and your life that is no longer there. It's been such a huge part of your life. I mean, for half my life, that's been my work and my job. And it's, as you both know, it's not just a job, it is very much your life. It's not a 9 to 5 Monday to Friday. And in my case, it's quite often a 4 a.m. to lunchtime work. But what she said to me, said, you have to allow yourself to grieve, because it's always going to be there and kind of eat away at you.
Yeah, I mean, photography is an obsession, isn't it? And I've known you for a long time, and obviously I've sort of seen you go through this, sort of through this issue that you've had, and how it's changed your life and how it's had to change your approach to photography. And obviously I've seen the highs and the lows, over that period. But I think it's there was a real tipping point with you. I remember when, the realization, when you accepted that, photography, just wasn't really an option for you in terms of full-time career anymore. And then art came in and replaced that sort of creative sort of urge that you have, that creative need that you have. And you someone sort of reinvented yourself again. I mean, it helps that you can draw, which is something I can't. I say to people, it's quite sickening. Vic's a really good photographer, but actually she's a really good artist as well. But I think that that there was a real change in you for the positive. When you came to terms with that sort of loss of photography in the way that it had been a part of your life before, and that replacement with the arts and all the new avenues that's opening up for you.
Yeah, I mean, it has. I think that was the one thing that the pain psychologist was really instrumental in helping me with. She said, you have to come to terms with it, you have to accept it, you have to grieve, you have to go through that grieving process, because you've lost a really big part of who you were. And she actually said, if you need to cry, you cry, and it will be over stupid stuff that's probably not related to whatever, to photography or whatever. And I thought, okay, well, I've just got to let things happen. And she wasn't joking, because every time I tried to cut up potatoes, I would start crying. And I don't know what it is about potatoes that set me off, but it was always potato.
When do you think that sort of penny dropped with you over the art and that becoming, your primary focus? Was there a point that you can sort of put your finger on and say that was the time, or that was the event, that was the thing that happened that really made your decision for you? Or was it a gradual process?
I think it was mostly a gradual process, but when I did Global Bird Fair in 2024, and I just had my art there, and the reaction that I had to it, really, really positive, absolutely amazing. Not just that, but the people that I met through that would come to speak to me about working with them. And and using my art to help kind of raise awareness and funds for wildlife conservation, which is pretty much what I do now. I think it was like, you know, that little light bulb came on and said, you know what, I genuinely feel like this is where I'm supposed to be. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. You know, the real positives of being able to highlight this Taylor salamander from Mexico that is critically endangered. You know, most people don't know about that outside of Mexico. Actually, probably most people in Mexico don't know about it unless they are a herpetologist. But for me to be able to kind of take this and go, you know, look at this amazing animal, but look at the amazing work this really small group of dedicated conservationists are doing, and to bring their work to the world. But then being able to talk to people, be it through the sculptures that I make of the animals, or like the paintings, the drawings, or the wall paintings I do, it's that connection that I'm giving people back to nature, if that makes sense. Like, I've just noticed beyond photography, I mean, I think, I don't know whether are we a little bit over saturated with photography on that level, that they see something different in the artwork that makes them stop and think. And I can have a whole half an hour conversation about a piece of artwork. With a photograph, you're lucky if it's like 30 seconds now. So I think it really was that birther in 2024 that was the final light bulb moment, and then kind of really driven me forward to where I am now.
It's interesting because you're raising awareness, Vic, through a different medium, right? Instead of photography, obviously, it's through art. Question for you. One of the things, you know, as a wildlife photographer, nature photographer, that I enjoy the most, and this is the process, of course, it's being outside, it's exploring, it's, you know, being in the field and taking photographs of animals and natural scenes. When you're creating art, I would assume you're mostly indoors. How do you handle that change where most of your work, instead of being out in the field now, it's probably inside of your house? And how do you balance being outside with nature and all of that?
To be fair, Josh, when you've had 2 months of rain, it's not so difficult.
I bet.
Yeah, that's true, actually.
It's the hardest part for me to come to terms with. But that said, I've been lucky over the last few years to spend my summers in Switzerland with Chris. And my time in nature has basically been going for like really long 15, 20K hikes, and just, you know, just taking a little point and shoot camera with me and just really enjoying everything that I'm seeing and hearing. You know, I do miss the going out and being in nature. And if it ever stops raining in the UK, then I will definitely be going out and doing more walks and just going out there and, I don't know, just being in nature. So, I mean, that's definitely been the hardest bit for me, because that was a huge part. I mean, I'm a zoologist by training, not a photographer. So, you know, being in the field was always the biggest joy for me. And now it's just trying to find new ways to do that. And I quite often will go for walks with friends. Yeah, I think the difference is there's no pressure on that time out in nature now. There's no pressure to think, oh, I need to come back with some photos, or I need to come back with material. It's taken all the pressure off. So actually, I enjoy that time out that I do have even more now.
Well, that makes sense.
I was gonna say, you know, about that point. Do you feel that, you know, because there is no pressure on you to produce photographs and new material photographically, you're almost unburdened now?
Very much so.
You know, is there is that sort of feel freeing for you? Because I know that, you know, from my own point of view, if I haven't taken anything decent for a while, and I'm in one of those periods now because the weather's been so bad and I've had other things going on in my life that mean I just haven't been able to get out, you know, I'm starting to feel the pressure at this point to create some more material to start putting out on social media and everything else, because I know I haven't been very creative for the last few weeks. So I'm feeling the pressure. I'm just wondering, how that, transition has helped that, and how much more freeing you can or that is to just sort of go out for a walk and not feel the pressure of having to take anything to share with the world.
It has been absolutely liberating, quite frankly, to not have.
Liberating was a word I was struggling to find, actually. So yeah.
Yeah, it's just because there is no pressure for me to produce photos, and yes, I still have, obviously I do have a photographic social media account, but going forward that's very much more going to be about my project. And I think, yeah, it has just removed all pressure, from having to gain material, because I think this is the other thing. People think photography is so instant, and it's not, as you both know. There's a lot of work that goes into achieving images, and it's not as simple as going out and just continually producing content. And what I have noticed is, from the art side of things, people love seeing the process of it. They love seeing how a piece of art comes together, how a drawing layers up, how the wall paintings start to come to life. And they really enjoy that as much as seeing the final piece. And they don't even care if it takes 2-3 months to achieve the final piece. But with photography, that just isn't there.
Let me ask, Vic,
Yeah.
when it comes to creating art, how important was your photography career in relation to that? So as you're painting or creating anything, whether it's, sculptures of birds, paintings and the like, how has your photography impacted that?
It has. I mean, it's been a really important part, because I will, wherever possible, I will always work from my own photos. And so, like, a piece of art for me, be it a sculpture, a drawing, or whatever, I'm probably working for about 3 or 4 photos minimum per piece of artwork. So it's, and I think because I've always loved that kind of more creative, alternative, almost artistic approach to photography anyway, it has kind of, it does still play quite a role in my work. I will trawl through my hard drives, which means they're finally getting a clear up as well. But I will trawl through my hard drives, and I will go, right, okay, I need to do this big showcase piece of a golden eagle, which is what I'm working on at the moment. So I must have pulled off 30 photos of every different angle possible of golden eagles that I had. If I don't have something, I will see if I can go out and get it.
Do you tend to use more literal based photography now to create that artwork? Because I know, looking for a Victoria Hillman literal shot, when you were doing photography, was a hard thing, because that wasn't what you did. I mean, you were always, I just remember your photography from the early days of sort of knowing you, was it's always very sort of shallow depth of field and very atmospheric, very ethereal type of work that you produced. But presumably now, are you looking more at you're producing literal photography as a point of reference for your artwork? If you found yourself sort of going down that road more with photography?
Interestingly, yes. So last year I actually said to myself, when I was in Switzerland, I said, right, I'm just going to spend the summer basically collecting reference images for my artwork. So a lot of them are a lot more kind of literal images, if you like, a bird on a stick or whatever, which I never used to do. So it's quite interesting for me to do that now. But alongside that, what I'll also do, if there's the possibility, so let's say I'm working on this golden eagle at the moment, I will actually zoom in and take photos, like a real close-up of the feather colours and the details. so I'm kind of combining the two, but it's because I'm with the artwork, I want to create scenes and habitats for these animals to be in as well. It does end up being a little bit more literal than the more creative stuff, with the exception of when I do flowers and that, which I still don't do literal flowers. It's still really creative.
Sure.
Yeah, that's
So
interesting.
it's sort of the bigger animals, the birds and the mammals and that sort of thing, and the frogs, presumably, that you'd be looking to do more literal stuff with. Yeah. Sorry, Josh, I cut across you.
Yeah, no worries. No, I was just saying that it's really interesting how it changes, Vic, how you shoot in terms of getting different angles, getting different perspectives, and that obviously helps you when you're creating any type of art around that animal. And I think what's great, I was not that long ago, I went to the home of, it's a historic site here in the United States. It's outside of Philadelphia. It's the home of John James Audubon, and he was obviously one of the early folks over here in North America. And he painted, he put together these famous plates of paintings of all the North American species, and of course he killed them. He would have to shoot them, and then he would create paintings from the species that he found in the field. So it's kind of nice that we don't have to do that anymore. We're well beyond that.
Yeah, well, I think that sort of digital photography, is really changed the game from that perspective.
Saving lives.
Josh, question for you actually. How much does looking at art, or how much has that influenced the way that you actually approach your own photography? Because I know that, from past discussions that we've had, you've mentioned it quite a bit. That sort of, looking at, not just photography, but, but art to try and get ideas for your own photographic approach.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a huge influence on me. And this is why this conversation is so interesting to me, because growing up, I never thought or knew I had an artistic side. And it was really photography that brought that out. And as I've learned over the years, and it's especially through print media, right? Books by different photographers or books by different artists, you start to get a hang of not only just composition, but color theory, right? Complementary colors, what colors go well together, reds and greens and blues and golds. And you start to realize, at least for me, I think it was always there. It just was something that's untapped. So, I think that while folks like me choose photography as the medium to express our sense of art and what we want to pass on to the viewing audience, I think there's so many different mediums, and I think that maybe one day I wouldn't even mind experimenting. I will say, Vic, I'll start with paint by numbers on my end, but yeah, I mean, they're so closely tied, and photography is art. I mean, it's just a different medium. So yeah, absolutely, Rob. It's been a huge impact, because I think all of these, in order to understand art, to know whether it's even all the way back, looking at art history or current day art, it makes you a better photographer, simply from a compositional standpoint and from just color theory as well.
Yeah, and the use of light as well. I mean, when you look at some of some of the classic artists, their use of light is just exquisite, and I think there's a lot that we as photographers can learn and draw from that. If you pardon the pun. By studying those people and that use of light. But I'm with you. I mean, I can't, unlike Vic, I can't draw. So photography is the only way I have to express my visual creative side. I mean, obviously, I write as well. So, but that's not visual. Photography is the only thing that I have to express my visual creativity. Vic, what do you actually think you enjoy more or get most satisfaction out of now? Presumably it's going to, your answer is going to be the artwork over the photography now.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is the artwork over the photography. I think a big turning point for me was, I know, Rob, you've seen this one, the coloured pencil drawing I did of the jaguar on black paper.
Yeah, that was amazing. Yeah.
It was a piece I wanted to do, and I didn't know if it would work. It's working from my own photos. The photos were actually taken at Chester Zoo. But I just, for me, trying to really put across the character and, you know, the feeling of my subjects into a drawing. Yes, I could do it in photography, but it's become much more of a exciting challenge to do it through using the pencils, or, you know, now with doing the sculptures and stuff as well. And I think, yeah, I mean, for me, that the process of creating the art is definitely takes over from the photography. I mean, the photography, it'll always be a huge part of who I am and what I do, but having found the art as well, I think it's a slower process, because you have to layer. You know, something like the jaguar drawing took me, I think, around about 30 hours to do. And I've actually just finished another one of a baby Western lowland gorilla in mum's hands, and that's again done on black paper. I will say I can't draw on white paper. I just have this mental block. It doesn't happen. I seem to draw on coloured paper. But yeah, I think that process of layering everything up and watching something come together slowly, because it's not a quick process, and I will never rush anything. I think definitely the art it's a far bigger part of me now. But that's, I think, with the artwork. So I recently did a pencil drawing of a lynx cub, and I photographed lynx, and they are absolutely stunning animals. And I've always been one for colours and textures. I've always try and notice as much colour and texture in there. It wasn't until I did that drawing and I used 60 different coloured pencils to get the colouring right in this lynx cub's fur that I thought, wow, even for me, I'm missing stuff photographically that I'm picking up when I'm drawing it.
Yeah, the attention to detail with the animal when you're drawing it, I mean, it has to be there, right? And just looking at it at a high level, it's not like you're leaving the photography space, Vic. I see it as you're just expanding your workflow, where in photography, we take an image in the field, we process it, and we post it online, or we put it on our website, or we print it. In your case, you're taking images, but it's part of the process. And then, of course, you're transferring those or using those as inspiration to create art. So it's almost like your workflow has expanded, but you're still doing what you've always done.
Yeah, pretty much. I'd say that is pretty much spot on, Josh. It's like, for me, I think because I studied animal behavior through both my degrees, and I'll always be a scientist at heart. The behavior of animals is one thing that massively captures me. So capturing behaviors and characters and atmosphere into the drawings now, when I'm going out to photograph reference photos for artwork that I'm thinking about, I'm also thinking, okay, well, you know what, it's not really doing anything at the moment. I'm just going to sit here and I'm going to spend longer and just see what else happens. It's definitely changed the way I do my photography as well.
Yeah, no, it's funny because Josh has made a point that I was going to bring up. It's almost like you have now, or you are now, using that photography as part of your artistic process. So it's not like it's that skill is lost completely, or the enjoyment of that has lost completely. It's just that the focus is in a sort of different direction. It's the photography isn't the end result. The end result is the artwork, and as I said, the photography is just now part of the process.
Yeah, very much so. And actually, one of the really nice things is there is zero pressure on my photography now. Yeah. Absolutely no pressure whatsoever on my photography, which is just amazing, to be honest.
And
that has to be a relief.
Yeah, sorry, Josh. It's interesting what you were saying about your background as a scientist, where do you think, because my sort of thought process for and the photographers that I know that have a science-based background is that they are more literal photographers. They are capturing behavior, they're capturing the details of an animal. They want a literal representation. Where do you think the sort of artistic side to you came from, bearing in mind that sort of scientific background?
My mum. So the art definitely runs in the family from my mum's side anyway, and I've always been creative and artistic in ever since I was a little girl. It's something I've always really enjoyed, and I actually even did art at school as well, up to GCSE level. But I think with me, because I've always, nature and wildlife fascinates me, but it fascinates me on a different level that I can't quite understand, can't quite kind of describe, but I feel a really close connection with nature and wildlife. And for me, it's not about, even when with the photography, it was never about trying to capture literal photos. I really wanted to capture the character, because obviously most of my work has revolved around small things, invertebrates, amphibians, reptiles, that kind of thing that most people probably don't photograph. And for me, they get forgotten about, and people think, oh, well, it's just a toad, or it's just a frog, or it's just a spider. It's like, these animals have probably the most amazing characters and personalities. I mean, I spent years, probably 7-8 years, surveying the same toad population on top of the Mendes. So I got to know all those toads, which sounds a little bit insane. But I really got to know them, and I got to, recognize them, because they all look slightly different. And, you'd see them, they really did have their own personalities. So I think maybe studying behavior more than like the other side of kind of zoology, I think maybe that helped with the creative side as well.
Yeah, sure. Sorry, Josh, I cut across you again. You were going to ask something.
Yeah, no worries, Rob. Let me ask Vic, how has your photography changed in the sense of, or let me ask this, maybe a better way, how does creating art, whether it's sculpture, painting, and the like, how does that influence your photography if you want to go out and take an image in the field? Certainly most of our listeners, if not all, they're photographers. Some of them, I suspect, may engage in, creating their own art, but I would imagine doing what you do has to have an impact and in some ways change your photography, even beyond just taking some images, some literal images to prepare a piece of work. It's got to change your eye and your perspective a little bit, does it not?
It actually really, really does, because most of my work is actually done on black paper, which makes me quite unusual for a colour pencil artist anyway. But as Rob will kind of back me up on this one, we went out in November last year just to photograph some birds at one of the lakes near him. And, I was photographing gulls, which is not something I would normally do. But I put my camera into the black and white kind of mode setting, and I actually shot them in black and white, because I was looking at where the light was. And, when I saw them and the way the light was hitting them, the first thing that came to mind was this would make such a striking drawing on black paper of like the white bird and its reflection. So it's definitely changed the way that I'm seeing my subjects when I come to photograph them now.
Mm.
Yeah, so you're seeing the finalized, or you're envisaging the sort of finalized piece of art, rather than the way that perhaps Josh and I would still look at it, and it's a photographic opportunity. What's the end photograph going to look like? You're actually thinking, how can I capture something to create, a drawing or a sculpture at the end of the process? So that gives you a different approach to the actual capturing of the image.
Very much so. Like, so the goals and stuff that we did on the lake, and when I said I wanted to try and get the little grebe, because it would be quite cool to make a little grebe if I can as a 3D sculpture. If I'm making 3D sculptures, I need every angle possible. So if I'm looking at something and I say, oh, you know what, I really need to, and I'm doing this with some birds for something more specific. When I go out and photograph them, I'm like, right, I know I need to get photos to create a sculpture. So I need front, back, sides, feet, beak, eyes, talons, everything, feather details, because I try to make my sculptures as realistic as possible, given they're only about 6 centimeters. But then other times, like when I saw those goals, I was like, it's almost something has changed in my head and the way that I think about things, because the first thing I thought about was, how can I capture these images to allow me to create a really kind of impactful drawing from this moment?
Yeah, because the contrast was obvious, wasn't it? That, when we were looking at those birds and the way the light was falling on them, and the color of the background, the contrast was quite striking. And I knew I wanted to use that, in a way to create a photograph or create an artistic photograph. You were using it in a way to create your to create a piece of artwork at the end of a longer process. So yeah, it's interesting, and I guess that almost opens up a different approach to the actual photography as well, in a way, because if you're thinking about how you can actually render a situation in a piece of art, that might influence or could influence the way you approach the settings in the camera to create a different look and a different feel of the actual photograph itself. And I think that's when photographers can draw a lot of inspiration from looking at art to give them ideas in the field to just try something a little different.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. I mean, it's a learning process for me. It's a really interesting learning process for me, because it's not something I would have done before. I would have pretty much the same as you guys. I would have looked at a situation, gone, right, how can I make the most out of this situation to create a really beautiful photograph? And now I very, very rarely think of it that way. So I think as photographers, I always will be a photographer. I think we can actually take a lot of inspiration from different styles of art. I mean, for me, I always say photography is just another art form anyway. I mean, it literally means drawing with light. So I think there is a lot to be said for, taking some inspiration from different styles of art as well, as to what could actually be possible photographically.
Yeah. Let me just sort of pivot back to something you said a little bit earlier, when we were talking about your science background, and you were talking about being sort of just insanely inquisitive about things. And it's more of an observation that I've made over the years, that when you have photographers that are consistently producing work that gets noticed, either it could be social media, it could be competitions, it could be a number of things, but that's the one quality I think that they all have, is this inbuilt and just natural inquisitive nature about everything to do with the natural world, and I think that gets transposed into the photographs that they actually produce. You can see that curiosity coming out in the work that they produce. I mean, would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I mean, there's some people out there, you can tell it's their work almost instantly because they have a particular style, but I don't some people understand this and some people don't, but basically for me, you can see that person in the work that they are creating. So for me, whether it's photography or art, it's giving over a little bit of you to that final piece. And I think that's where photographers particularly can be more successful, in that we see that little bit of them in there. We see almost how much it means to them. They didn't just go out to get shots for this, that, or the other, be it a salon competition or for social media, and they're a bit flat and meaningless. With those that take their time and they understand their subject and the nature and the whole interaction, you actually feel that little bit of them in those photos.
Yeah, and it's almost like they want to show the world something that the world hasn't seen, or they want to share their experience, what they've seen with other people, and tell them about that species or about that interaction, or they want to educate as well as entertain in a way, or impress with their with their photographic ability. They want to they want to tell a story, and they want to educate people as well, and I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, I look at like work that you both do as photographers, and it really makes me think. I mean, I know some of the stuff that Josh has been doing recently. I look at it and go, God, and it's weird because I look at it and go, wow, that would just make the most beautiful drawing. And like some of the stuff that you've been producing, Rob, I'm like, wow, I wonder if you could do that as a wall painting.
Yeah.
But I see both of you in your own photography, in different ways. And I think that's the thing. You both, for me, when I see stuff like that, I get that feeling that there is that wanting to pass on this beauty and, I don't know, like connection with everyone, to say, basically saying, wow, look at how amazingly beautiful this is. And those images in particular, I think they definitely spark more conversations than something more literal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know about you, Josh, but I always want to show something. I always want to show people how amazing nature is. That's kind of the key driver for me, is to inspire people to take an interest, and either go about their photography in a different way, or be more inquisitive, be more interested in the, even if it's a common subject.
Yeah, I'm the same way, Rob. I mean, I'm like a little kid when I see certain things. It's exciting, right? And it's always new. It's always fresh. And I think ginning up some excitement around nature, and if we can do it through our photography, I mean, that's just a great thing. That's always been, even maybe it's intentional, or maybe it's just a subconscious motivation. I'm not sure, but it's always been a driving factor for me. Always.
Well, I think this is where this is what I'm trying to get to. It's those people that are so enthusiastic about what they see in nature, and that wanting to share it with people. I think they make the best photographers, the best artists, because you can't bottle and sell that.
It's passion.
Exactly. It's a passion for something, and it's getting that passion across through whatever art medium you use. I think it's something you can't teach. You either have it or you don't. And for me, it's it is just trying to share that with the world.
As we get older in life, I find that when you're a kid, whether it's the holidays or Christmas, you always have that level of excitement. And in many ways, and maybe this is just me, the world gets dull as you become an adult and you're entering your working career. But being out in nature and taking photos, and just expressing myself, I feel it brings me back to that excitement and that feeling of when I was a kid. Things weren't dull. Everything was new, everything was fresh. It's hard to put into perspective, but that's kind of how I feel.
Yeah, and I think especially when you're going through those periods of your life when you're having a stressful or difficult time with something.
Yeah.
Those are the periods that when I have an interaction with nature, I remember more vividly than other times. I mean, I can remember one point in case was I was probably must have been around 2012, 2013, something like that. And sitting in a rib out off the Isles of Scilly with a pod of dolphins literally just riding the bow wave with the rib, and I could have leaned over the side and stroked them, and just how amazing that was. I mean, the photographs were pretty poor, but I remember that, and I always will remember that experience because I think because you're in an emotionally charged state. I think that when you have an experience like that, it stays with you for longer. And I remember almost crying at the time, because it was so, this experience was so moving, to be that connected with, an intelligent animal. Yeah, it's just, and I think, you can't buy that. You can't understate the importance of those experiences in terms of mental well-being and all the other stuff that goes with that. And I think from an artistic point of view, it's almost I want to convey that emotion in a photograph, in those situations.
Yeah.
And I guess Vic from
It's special.
yeah, and I guess Vic from your point of view, that goes for the artwork too.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, like for me, going through 2 major surgeries and not being able to get out. I mean, for the first one that I had in 22, it was, I had that I couldn't drive for a couple of months after I had the surgery. I mean, luckily enough, I did go out to Switzerland, and I spent the summer in Switzerland, so I could just go for little walks. But I was limited. I couldn't walk more than 10 minutes. And then the spinal surgery I had on my neck, I had it just before Christmas, and then it seems to have pretty much just rained since then. And it's not been possible for me to get out. I couldn't drive for 6 weeks after the spinal surgery, so I couldn't even take myself out anywhere. I mean, I couldn't do anything. I couldn't lift anything. I couldn't do anything at all. And I really, really missed just having that connection with nature, be it just walking around the estate and, just looking at what's going on. And weirdly for me, the artwork has been this massive lifeline in more ways than one. I mean, if you take out like the career stuff, for my mental health, it's been an absolute lifesaver. It's kept me going through this whole process because it's given me that connection with nature in a really bizarre way. But like Rob said, like, with the dolphins and that lives with him, probably more than because of the emotional state he was in at the time. I kind of have something similar that I connect, particularly with the drawings. It's not so much with the other stuff, but with the pencil drawings. I find that I can connect far better with images that I've taken myself because there's been a reason I've taken them. There's an emotional connection there somewhere. And actually the resulting artwork ends up being far better because there's like the baby gorilla that I finished a few weeks ago. I actually that baby, all my girlfriends actually adopted me that baby as a gift for my hen party, and we went to see it, and those photos were taken during that time. So there's like that connection there. So it resulted in a much kind of more meaningful piece of art. So I think it's very much been a mental lifeline for me with not being able to get out so much as I would love.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I think having that connection, that attachment, to your point, Vic, that must mean a lot, especially when you're working on particular pieces that, whether it's an animal that you photographed or whether it's an animal that I'm sure that there's a huge impact there. And it's inspiring probably throughout the process as you're creating it.
Yeah,
Yeah, but
I mean,
very
yeah,
much. I mean, you don't, these things, it's not a quick process by any stretch of the imagination, because it's layer upon layer upon layer. And one thing I do is I actually use my paper as another color as well. But you see things come to life. So when you take the photograph, you're basically freezing a moment in time. But when you then create like a drawing or a wall painting, from that, what you see is this thing really coming to life in another way, but gradually.
I guess because you're not constrained, are you, by the expectations of the viewer in terms of, if this is a photograph, we want you to present it, as you saw it. Whereas if you're working on a piece of art, there is much more acceptance of, an artistic interpretation on that. So you can change things, you can change backgrounds, you can put it in a different setting, because that is accepted as part of the artistic process, whereas in photography it's more frowned upon if you put something on a different background, or well, that's not, that's not really what you should be doing, and whereas if you're working on a piece of art, there might be 3 or 4 photographs that you could put together in the finalized piece of art, and it's completely accepted. Whereas in photography, yeah, there's a large part of the community that would frown upon, it's probably the wrong way of putting it, but yeah, wants a more traditional approach, shall we say.
Yeah, I mean, very much so. I think being in both worlds, it's definitely like the photography and the art world, it's very different. I've done 20 years as a pro photographer, and I think I said this to you like the other week, Rob, that if someone actually said to me, you could wholeheartedly take this path here would take you down to being a pro photographer and going back to doing everything you did before, and you have another path that you go down, and that's the artistic route, creating artwork and doing what I'm doing now, and there was no constraints, medical or otherwise, I would not go back to being a professional photographer.
Yeah. It's well, I mean, I do remember the change in you, and how that exploring that, the art side of things, changed your whole perspective on how you looked at obviously your injury, and how that then changed what you were and weren't able to do. Art, it literally, when you say art saved you, I actually do believe that's the case. Certainly helped your mental health no end, when you because it almost gave you a renewed purpose in life, and I think that's what you found. I think that's how it changed things for you.
Definitely, without a doubt. I mean, if someone had said to me even 3-4 years ago, in 3 or 4 years' time, you're going to be working with the Harpy Eagle Reserve in Colombia, you're going to be applying for a scholarship to go to the Falkland Islands because of your artwork, or you're going to create a drawing of a frog that was thought to be extinct, and after 20 years of searching they've rediscovered it, I genuinely probably would have laughed in your face and said, don't be silly, not going to happen. But the reality is, this is actually the path that my life is now taking. I'm creating Harpy Eagles to raise funds for the Harpy Eagle Reserve, and they're even going to sell them in their shop in Colombia, and working with these guys in Mexico, and doing the application to go down and teach needle felting in the Falkland Islands. None of this stuff would have happened if it wasn't for art. And like for me, I always try and hold on to the fact that everything happens for a reason. It might really, really suck at the time, and we might not know what the reason is, but eventually we will know, and we'll start to understand that path. And I truly believe now that actually, like Rob said, it saved me in more ways than one. It really, really did. There were times I felt so lost, genuinely no idea what I was going to do with my life. This big part of me is gone. And now I'm just like, wow, like all this stuff is happening and it's so exciting. And I'm actually helping to reconnect people with nature whilst raising funds for conservation, which is something that's really close to my heart. And, this amazing new life is basically laid out in front of me, ready for me to kind of take the journey.
Yeah, that's great. That's amazing, Vic. If I could pivot a little bit, and for a viewing audience, or I should say our listening audience, not our viewing audience, but when it comes to making that transition, or I'll say that jump or that leap from taking photographs to creating art, and it could be physical art, it could be digital art, it's intimidating. I will say for myself, if somebody put a blank piece of paper in front of me with some pencils or some paintbrushes, I would be intimidated. What would you say to the folks listening out there, Vic, that are scared to do that, or they just don't have the confidence to do that? Where's the best place to start?
I totally get where you're coming from, Josh, because to be honest, it scared the life out of me. I was just like, what am I going to do? And if I'm honest, I never knew I had the capabilities to draw how I'm now drawing. But I didn't sit there with a piece of black paper and go, right, I'm going to draw this and produce it. Mm-hmm. I actually just sat there and went, well, what if I just sketch out a few things? Start small, pick something that, and I appreciate, like, there are going to be people that are far more into the digital side of art than they are the physical with pencils and paper. And I know there's some great software. I've got friends that create digital art and then use that to create products from. And I think that the big thing is to just have fun with it. Don't put any pressure on yourself, and just say, okay, what is my favorite thing? What do I really like? So for me, it was frogs, and still is. And I'm like a little kid when I see frogs still. And that's where I started, because I feel like I have this weird connection with them. And I thought, well, what if I just start sketching out, just roughly sketching, sitting there watching some TV or put some music on. It's almost like doodling. And you start there and you just build it up gradually, or you just find that medium that you do find quite fun and intriguing to play with.
And is it almost like sort of giving yourself permission to fail as well? Because I know that, I'm with you, Josh. I mean, I find it completely intimidating because I know I can't draw, and it's taking the path that you've taken, Vic. I couldn't. I just don't think I could manage it. I just don't think I've got the skill set for it. But I guess if you accept that actually you probably are going to screw it up or you're going to fail or whatever, but just give yourself permission to do that. It's kind of part of the learning process, isn't it, I guess?
Oh gosh, very much so. Yeah, you have to basically accept you're going to fail. But as I always say, when we mess up taking a photograph, when we absolutely nail a photograph, we're like, yes, nailed it, put it in the nailed file. We don't really spend that much time looking at it. But if we mess up a photo, I'm not talking like really badly mess it up, like take a picture of our foot instead of something else, but we're nearly there but not quite. We would spend more time looking at it and go, well, that doesn't quite work, or this doesn't quite work. quite often, like we would maybe be accepting to fail at something that we do, say like the photography, and there is absolutely no shame in failing at other things. I mean, you should have seen some of the first sketches that I did when I went back to drawing. I mean, there's a reason I don't share them.
But it's a learning process, right?
Yeah.
It's a learning process, and I know as we get older, like when we're children, you know, learning is so much easier, and we know that as we get older, learning is definitely a lot harder. But there's some really good kind of scientific research that's going on saying actually, if we do persevere and learn new skills as we get older, it actually helps keep our brain healthy and younger as well. But it's, you have to accept that, you know what, you're going to mess it up and you're going to fail. You know what, have a good giggle at it and move on.
Yeah. And there's other tools out there too. I mean, this isn't a plug for Topaz, but I have a Topaz plugin on Photoshop. It's called Topaz Impression. And essentially what it does, Vic, if you haven't seen it before, it'll take a photograph and it essentially puts a filter on top of it and makes it into, you can make it impressionistic, you can make it into, you know, a sketch, you know, all these different things in it. And it takes your photo and it turns it into a painting, you know, basically. And I'll experiment with that. I've taken some images of the ponies out in Chincoteague. There's Spanish Mustangs around some of the beaches here, and they look really cool actually. And it's just a way of experimenting on the digital side, right? I'm not physically using my hand to draw or paint anything, but that's very pleasing too. So there's other tools out there too that I think folks can use to just experiment and be completely creative. Just don't box yourself in.
Oh, very much so. I mean, I actually hate using a computer. I always have. But then I didn't grow up using them. And I think that's the difference. You know, even when I did my first degree, you know, we were handwriting reports and stuff. You know, we had dissection lessons where we would have to draw and we would annotate by hand. You know, we didn't use computers or tablets or anything. So for me to sit there and think, you know, have a play with something on the computer just seems so alien to me. But I know for some people that's like, you know, that would be the perfect fit for them. And I think it, like you said, it's just another way to be creative, whether you prefer the digital side of it or the physical side of it. I mean, you know, for me, it's always the physical side anyway. And I think quite often when you've done a lot of science and you do a lot of research and writing and stuff, and you have to use your computer for data analysis and typing everything up and that, the last thing you want to do is sit there and attempt to be creative, because your computer is basically, well, that's where you do all your reports and everything else. That's the boring bit in the room.
I think we're all of a generation that, you know, looks at technology in that way. I mean, you know, from your point of view, Josh, I'm guessing that you enjoy the process of taking the image far more than getting it on the computer and doing the edit.
Oh my God, 100%.
Exactly. And I know it will be the same, right?
Yeah,
to the point where I'm revolting now. I'm becoming as analog as possible.
Yeah,
because I'm just sick of screens, you know. I mean, like Vic, I think all of us, we grew up without computers. I mean, for me, they entered maybe more around the college time frame for me, and it was just for certain things, but now they just dominate our lives, and I'm looking for any excuse to get away from a screen.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm a bit older than both of you, but it's like, you know, it wasn't really until I was about 25 that using a computer regularly entered my life. So my whole world before that time was completely, you know, analog, if you like, you know, writing things by hand. You know, I remember the first job I had, you know, I had a card index system where I would write, you know, on cards and put them in a system, and I would recognize those cards, and they would open those neural pathways in my brain to remember, you know, certain people or whatever, because I used to record conversations and whatever in the job that I had. And do you know what I mean? But just looking at that particular piece of paper, whereas if it was an entry on a computer, you would just get lost because there's nothing visual to remind me of past conversations really, other than notes that I'd taken. But I do doodles and things like that on the car, and I just remember things. They were little sort of visual clues, I guess, that sort of analog system had that gets lost when you turn things digital and you computerize things.
Yeah.
I mean, I still don't, if I'm writing articles and I'm actually going back to working on my project and writing more articles and starting to work on future books, I'm not going to be doing it on my computer. I will use my computer to do the research. I will then sit with a pad and a pen, and I will sit and write out the notes and write it until it's ready for me to type up. Because I can't think of anything worse than sitting in front of my computer. And actually now, like the photos that I'm taking as reference photos for artwork, I don't even bother processing them because I don't need to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's something gratifying, Vic, too, of just putting pen to paper and writing down your thoughts and your ideas. It's just, I think for us, just mentally, it's much different than typing on a keyboard. I find it much more gratifying. And nowadays, people won't even do that. It's just going to be, they're going to open their AI chatbot and they're going to have AI write everything for them. It's a lost art.
Yeah, I think it's another way of expressing your personality, though, isn't it? When you do your own handwriting, or you look back at notes you've taken and you look at the hand and you kind of know what mood you're in when you made those notes or those observations, because if if you're feeling frustrated, my handwriting tends to get a bit angular and whatever, whereas I'm more relaxed and more rounded and relaxed looking, so you know that those emotions and those feelings are going down on the page, whereas if you've just typed it, you can't get that sense. And I think when you're looking at photography, when you take a picture, I can tell the sort of mood I've been in by the images that I come back with a lot of the time. It's quite sort of eye-opening when you go back through previous shoots and the emotions that you felt at that time. They come across in the images with me, for sure. And I think that's a good thing. It's a good thing because it gives your work personality, which I think is what we're saying with the artwork. There is definitely a personality in your work, Vic, when I look at it. As you were saying with the photography, there's a style, yes, but each piece of work is very individual, and I think that's whereas with photography you can use a technique time and time again, so you can use the same technique in similar situations and create results that would go together in a portfolio. Whereas with your artwork, I a lot of the time they are very individual, those pieces, and they don't particularly there's a style there, but there's they're very individual when you look at them.
Yeah, I mean that's it's kind of definitely what I'm going for as well. And I normally have a few pieces on go at any one time because I always found that if I was very, I'd say flat emotional, but I wasn't emotional one way or the other. It was kind of like a middle of the road. I could never produce anything photographically. And weirdly, I find exactly the same with my art now, which is why I always have a few pieces on the go, because there's a couple of pieces I know I can sit and I can just work through because I'm doing really boring base colors or whatever. But when it comes to a really special piece, I have to be in the right emotional frame of mind to work on it.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
I mean, Josh, from I know that. Well, I'm sure you're the same. That you will some days you'll go out and you're really, really feeling it, and you come back with some fantastic stuff. Sometimes from a very mundane situation, and other times it's just not there, and you just almost pack the camera away and go, no, I'm not feeling it.
I think most people are like that too. It's almost like a sport in a way, like golfers and you have momentum at times, right? And then there's ups and downs. No, absolutely. And I haven't met one photographer that hasn't said that, right? There's periods of inspiration. there's periods to reflect, there's periods of downtime, there's periods of it's raining for 2 months and I don't want to go out. There's all of that. So.
Yeah, welcome to my world.
Yeah.
uh,
But I think what I would say is, like, for any creative person, for, you know, in whatever medium, be it photography, you know, pencils, whatever, it's something that comes with the territory of being creative, is having those ups and downs. But it's the one thing that I've learned over the last few years is to just ride them. You know, there's always something you can do. You know, maybe you can't work on a really special piece when you're not in the right frame of mind, but like for me, I have to make bodies for all my sculptures. It's the most boring part of my work, with the exception of tax return. I can do that. I can be having the worst day in the world and I can still sit there and just make the base bodies for my animals. You know, so there's always something that we can be doing, but it's learning and accepting that, you know, we have to ride those peaks and troughs, and we have to work on stuff when we feel that we are able to emotionally, and not push it. I think that's the one big thing I've learned over the last few years is don't push it. If it's not happening, walk away.
Yeah, go and do something else maybe, and then, you know, change is as good as the rest, as they say, isn't it?
Yeah.
Do you? One question I wanted to ask you, and I've sort of noticed this, particularly when you do things like bird fair, for example. You know, there are quite a lot of photographers at bird fair who display work of varying quality, but it never seems to sell very well. You know, I think, you know, if you're going to somewhere like that and you're looking to make money after spending, you know, after spending out on the stand and all the expenses that go with it, I don't think you're ever going to make money with photography. With artwork, I think it's slightly different. Do you think that people value artwork more than photography because they feel there's more of an effort that's gone in to creating the end result?
Very much so. I mean, the first year I exhibited at Bird Fair, I had half photography, half artwork. There was, I mean, the photography was part of my project, so there was interest in the project side of it, but not so much in the photography, but the interest in the art side of it. Like, and I think that year really opened my eyes to the difference.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I had both on the same stand, so it was really easy to see. But I think, you know, the last couple of years of doing it, when people view a piece of art that has been created by someone using their hands, and I think definitely, I know, like, you know, Josh mentioned the AI as well, with AI coming in, and, you know, photography being a lot more available now to a lot more people. I think when they see a piece of artwork that someone has sat there and taken the time to create with their hands through whatever medium, it definitely is valued an awful lot more than photography. And I think I'm probably someone that's in a really good position to kind of comment on that, because I've seen it, you know, from both sides. I mean, there's one photo I'm really well known for, which is my white snake's head fritillary with the rainbow. Weirdly, if you add up the hours, that probably took more hours to achieve that one photo than it took me to draw my jaguar picture.
Do you think that people assign the time that that a photograph takes to produce just to the pressing of the shutter button, which is equivalent to you then, you know, putting those pencils and those paints on a piece of paper or canvas?
Yeah,
There's
very much
more
so.
effort involved in that, but that they just see the shutter as oh well, you press the shutter, it's taken you a fraction of a second to do that, and therefore the artwork is valued that much more, because they don't see the other work that's put in to creating the photograph. For example, your snake's head fritillary, because, you know, that situation was unique and you had to be in that position at the time, and the time was all the other times that those conditions didn't exist.
Yeah, I mean, very much so. I think that's definitely how people see it. They view a photo as the effort that's gone into it is basically, pressing the shutter button. But the other thing that I've, it's come up a lot in the last 2 years where I've just had my artwork there, is people have said to me, that people that know me as a photographer and now as an artist, have actually said to me, we really enjoy your artwork and you've inspired your photography, and you've inspired us to get more creative with our photography and that. But, and we love the way that we take our photos now. However, we could never produce a piece of artwork. And I think what you're getting is people feel that any level of photography is actually achievable for them. But when they see, a drawing mounted and framed, hanging there, and people have said, like with the Jaguar, said, is that a photograph? I said, no, that's a colour pencil drawing. I'm pretty much picking them up off the floor, because they're like, how on earth did you create? Like, their mind cannot comprehend somebody could create a drawing like that, but they could create a photo like that. So I think that's definitely in play there as well.
Yeah, and I think different parts of the world value photography in different ways as well. Because Josh, it's certainly more valued in the States than it is here, for example.
Yeah, I would think, I don't know much about Europe, but I can say, like, from a fine art photography standpoint, things sell pretty well over here, actually. And you were mentioning, Rob, I think at Bird Fair, photos they're not high in demand over there.
No, yeah, exactly. Because, that which leads us on to Bird Fair, doesn't it? And because I think we hinted at Josh and I are going to be at Bird Fair this year. So we'll be in the art market. And in fact, hopefully, we're going to be right next door to Vic.
Yes, that's the plan. All being well, that we will all be next to each other, which would be really cool.
Exactly.
I can't wait. I can't wait to see. And plus, Vic, we haven't met before, but there's so many people I think I'll run into that I just haven't met before over there. So I'm really looking forward to it.
That's the one good, it's one of the really good things about Bird Fair, actually, is that, a lot of people from around the world are in the same place at the same time. So all these names that you and people that you haven't met before, it's just an opportunity to meet them. And it's great from that perspective. And the thing is, it's opened so many avenues for you, isn't it, Vic? As you were saying, through the artwork and what have you, the people that you've met while you've been there, has created so many of these connections for you.
Oh, it's been absolutely amazing. I mean, last year I met the people from Harpy Eagle Reserve. Also met a couple of guys from Madagascar, and we're kind of getting the ball rolling on working together there on something a lot bigger than just some needle felted sculptures, which is very exciting. I actually met everyone from Falklands Conservation through Bird Fair originally, and actually now, we're working so closely together, and I'm applying for this scholarship to go down there. And I think the thing is, people don't make the most of those opportunities. So for me, there are definitely people I want to see this year. And my parents are going to be, they help me out anyway. But like last year, I could not get off the stand to see some of these people. So it was literally trying to grab them when they came to look at my stand. But this year I said, I'm actually going to have an hour off the stand each day, so I can go and see these people to talk about, future projects and everything. And, I had a guy from Brazil birding, I think, something like that. He came by my stand every day for 3 days because he loved my humpback whale drawing, and he actually ended up buying the print. And it's those connections that you just don't get over the internet. You need that face-to-face big congregation of people where you can go and just sit down and have a chat, see, is there a way that we can work together, pooling our different skills and stuff.
Yeah, and in fact, you're actually going to be doing some stuff for us as well, because we've got some plans which we've been hinting at, haven't we, Josh? About
a little bit,
about maybe wild art and a competition, yeah, we'll be putting a little bit more, a little bit more meat on the bones on that one very, very shortly. And that's partly the reason that mainly the reason we're going to Bird Fair, but part of that as well will be, a conservation angle, which Vic very kindly is going to help us out with, and has already produced a couple of drawings and a little needle felted critter too. So we'll give more detail as time goes on, but hopefully we'll be next to each other. So that's going to be exciting, and I'm really looking forward to getting back and and exhibiting at Bird Fair again, because I remember certainly when I was involved with Bird Photographer of the Year, that weekend was just non-stop talking to people and meeting people, and it's just so inspirational when you meet so many photographers and you share so many ideas, and they all come on. Obviously we had the exhibition and we had the awards presentation, for that competition there as well, and they come and look at the photography, and it's just it's an amazing chance to network with people, I guess. So it's an awful word, but I can't think of anything better to describe it, really. It's an opportunity to meet people. So if you are coming to Bird Fair this year, or you weren't and you're now planning to, because we're going, do come and see us. We'll be in the art marquee. So we'll give you sort of stand details and everything else when we know, but we're definitely going to be there. Definitely you and me, Josh, and maybe someone else. I'm not sure yet, but
it's going to be exciting.
It is going to be exciting.
It is going to be so much fun.
Yeah,
so much fun. I actually really can't wait. I'm so excited about this show.
Yeah,
and I will get my statement piece finished.
You didn't sound too confident with that, Vic.
It's 3 foot by 2 foot. I've never done anything this big.
I'm sure you'll get it done in time. You've got 6 months, 5 months.
Yeah, true.
Well, we all know how quickly time goes.
Don't even go there.
Anyway, Vic, it's been really great to talk, and thanks so much for being so sort of open and sharing, your journey, I guess, from this sort of photography through to art, and how both things have been so important in your life, and from a personal and a work perspective. Where can people find you if they want to have a look at your work and that sort of thing, look you up?
I'm across most social media as Woolly Wildlife, which is WOOLLEY Wildlife, and that's all my kind of artwork side of things. And then with my photography side of things, it's, if you look up Forgotten Little Creatures or Victoria Hillman and Forgotten Little Creatures, it kind of comes together. So that's more the photographic side of what I do.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll put some links in the show notes anyway, so people can sort of click through to your Instagram account and all that sort of thing. So yeah. So
Vic, thank you so much.
Yeah. What's next for everybody? Well, Josh, what are you up to? You're going to be messing around in the snow by the sound of it.
Right after this, I'm running to the grocery store for milk and bread, Rob. And I think I'm going to have my shovel at the ready. That's about it for now.
We'll stay safe, Josh. Hope you kind of ride it out fine. And and thank you so much for having me on, actually, because it's really nice to talk openly about my journey. And everything. It's I'm super excited for the future, which is something I've not been able to say for a few years now. And I'm excited about keeping the connections going with people like you both, Rob and Josh, and I think there's amazing ways that artists and photographers can work together. And I'm just super excited, and it's been really great to kind of chat about it all with you guys.
Yeah. Well, I hope everybody. I hope everybody has enjoyed that conversation. I said thanks once again, Vic, for coming on and sharing all of that. It's I've really enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah. And we'll see you soon, Vic. Can't wait.
Yeah,
Yeah.
see you in July.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
yeah, I'll probably see you before, but yeah,
I'll definitely see you
hopefully.
before, because I'm no doubt probably going to have to be popping up to Andover at some point in the next few weeks to stock up.
I'll stock up, and of course, it's going to be orchid season very shortly too, so we must get out and yeah, and start doing some of that sort of thing as well.
If they haven't rotted away.
If they haven't really. No, be positive. The sunshine is coming. It really is. The dry weather is, well, hopefully. Anyway.
Well, the flooding and wet weather is really, really good for snake's head fritillary because they are kind of wetland species.
Well, they are. So that's only in a couple of months.
Yeah.
So yeah, that'd be something to look forward to. Anyway. Thanks everybody for listening. Hope you've enjoyed that conversation. It was obviously a great chat with Vic. And well, we'll see you again in the next one.
Thanks all.
Cheers. You have been listening to the Wildlife Photography Podcast. If you have enjoyed the content, then please help us to spread the word by sharing a link on your social media platforms, giving us a like, and leaving us a comment. See you all again next time.